want to say thank you to all of my subscribers. I really appreciate you guys a lot for subscribing to my channel, for watching my videos and then liking my videos. Today I'm going to be showing you how to cut a paneled peplum. So I actually came across this picture and I really liked this dress a lot, so I decided to make a tutorial of it and then share it with you guys. So that's just so you could see the picture up here. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. So if you are new to my channel, you are highly and very welcome. If you have not subscribed already, please subscribe. I would really appreciate that. So I have an announcement to make. This month I'm going to be running an online corset class, so where I'm going to be showing you how to sew a really good corset design. That's a blouse and then a gown. So if you're interested, so just send me a message on WhatsApp, so and then I will send you what it entails to be a part of that class. So that's that. So let's just get started. Okay, so we're going to be, so I folded my fabrics into two, so I'm going to explain to you now. So I'm using 5 inches drop because it is an off shoulder, so you could see it. It's actually an off shoulder, so I'll drop it by 5 inches. And then I'm going to cut it. I'm not doing a bustier, so I'm just going to do my regular waist dart. So you could decide to do this as a bustier. You could use any cut of your choice. So this is my bust line now, which is 10 inches. And then this is my under bust line. And then this is my half cut. I'm going to be adding a band, a 2-inch band to this to the top part. So the next thing I'm going to do now, so the back and the front, they are together with the zipper allowance for the back. So I'm just going to do this real quick. So I'm going to measure out the neckline. So since it's an off shoulder neckline, I'm just going to make use of 3.5 inches. So the next thing, I'm going to measure out my shoulder measurement, and the shoulder measurement I'm making use of is 18 inches. Sorry, 16 inches. When you divide into 2, you have 8 inches. So from this point, you remember we actually dropped by 5 inches. So I'm going to measure out the armhole measurement. So I'm using 8 inches for my armhole. So from this point like this, I'm just going to curve it like this. So like I told you, I said it's an off shoulder, so I'm going to curve it like this. Then from this point, originally this is supposed to be my neckline, but since it's an off shoulder, so I'm going to be tilting it towards the shoulder part. So I'm just going to come in by 1 inch. That's the shoulder. I'm going to come in on this point by 1 inch. So now the neckline, now I'm going to be extending it to this point, but I don't want it to be too deep. So you remember we actually used 5 inches. So what I'm going to add now, I'm going to add like 1 inch or 1.5, because you see it's very covered. So I'm going to add about 1.5 inches since I'm going to be putting a cape on it. So from this point like this, now I'm just going to curve this like this. So this will be my neckline like this to this point like this, and then we're connecting it, so you could see the way they are connected. So I just decided to connect it to the shoulder point. Then from this point like this, you rule this out. So this is the armhole and then this is the neckline. So I'm going to be cutting the back and the front together now. So before then, I'll measure out the body measurement. So the bust for this is actually the bust measurement. You divide all of your measurement into 4. So you divide into 4 and then you add your allowance to it. And then the under bust measurement also, I'll divide into 4. So you use your own applicable measurement. So if your bust is 40, you divide into 10, and then you add extra allowance. So the way to fold your fabric, I forgot to say it. If your bust is 40 inches, you divide into 4, you have 10 inches, and then you add 5 inches. So you fold at 15 inches. So I'm going to be cutting out now. I have, from the allowance that I added, I'll be able to take out my dart lines. So I'll cut the back and the front. So I'll open up the back. So the next thing I'm going to do now, I'm going to cut out. So this is what we're going to have. You're just going to put for my dart, I'm going to use 4.5 inches for my dart. So I'm just going to notch it from this point, so I will know when I'm sewing that this is my dart line point. So I'll stitch my dart upwards. So the actual picture there was actually used, a scuba was actually used, so you could use any fabric of your choice. So I'm just going to open it up like this for you to see. So you see how it is looking. So it's looking like what we have there. So I'll keep it like this, and then the next thing I'm going to do now, I'm going to cut out the band. So the band, you could decide to cut out the band, any band of your choice. So I've cut out my band. So you just use the band that I actually used 2.5 inches. So you could cut it out however you want. So I have my band ready. So the next thing now, I'm going to measure the length of my blouse. How much length do I actually want for my blouse? So remember, we actually dropped by 5 inches, and then the full length of my blouse is actually 25 inches. So I'll add 1 inch to it as allowance. So from this point, so you could decide to just place them on top on the allowance points like this. So you're still going to get it right. So from this point now, so I'm going to be making use of 26. So I'm going to count how much length I want. So my panel, I'm going to be cutting out, and the length I'm going to be cutting for my panel, for the panel that I'm going to use for the peplum, is 10 inches and length. So I'm going to keep it now and then show you how you divide the panel. So for the panel, the way for you to divide the panel, you are going to determine how much how many panels you actually want for your peplum. Depends on how many panels you want for your peplum. So that amount of panel, you are going to divide it. For example, let me just go for you to understand. For instance, the waist, my waist measurements, that's this point, is actually 28 inches. Sorry, that's my waist is 28 inches. So I'm going to put that into consideration. I'll write it out to 28 inches, and then I'll add 2 inches for my back and zipper allowance. So when you add 2 inches, that's 30 inches. So I have 30 inches. So how many panels do I actually want to use for this peplum? So I actually want to make use of 7 panels. You could make use of 8, 9, 10, depends on what you want. So I want 7 panels. So that 7 panels, I'm going to add half inch allowance to it. That's to stitch them, to connect them together. So at the end of the day, I'm going to have another extra 3.5 inches that I'm going to add to it. So I'm just going to approximate it, give or take. I'll approximate it to like 5 inches. So I like adding extra allowance. So it's going to be 5 inches. So I'm going to have another extra 5 inches. I hope you understand what's the calculation. So I'm just going to go over it again. My waistline is 28 inches. So plus my 2 inches zipper allowance. 28 inches plus my 2 inches zipper allowance, that's 30 inches. So I have 30 inches, and the panel that I want, that's the how many panels I want for my peplum, is I actually want 7 inches. So I'm going to add half inch allowance on all the points. So I have 3.5 inches. So when you add it to 7, you have 3.5 inches. So I'm just going to approximate it. Like I said, I'll approximate it to maybe 4 inches. So I just add an extra half inch, so just to round it up, so it's 4 inches. So you know I already have 30 inches before, and so I will now add that my extra 4 inches to it, so that's 34 inches. So now the full waistline that I have now is 34 inches. So that 34 inches now, I'm going to divide it by how many panels. I'll divide it into how many panels I want. So like I said I wanted 7 panels. So you divide 34 by 7. So that was why I approximated mine to 35. So I want it to be a round figure. So I divide by 7, and when you divide into 7, you actually have 5 inches. You have 5 inches. So that 5 inches, now that's what we are going to use to cut out our cone. So I hope you got it. So in cutting out the cones now that we're going to use, that's the peplum, you're just going to measure first the length that you are making use of. So I actually said I'm making use of 10 inches length. So this is like my 10 inches length now. So I'll mark it out neatly and nicely. So this is my 10 inches length. So, and you remember that the top part, we actually divided it into 5 inches. So the top part is going to be 5 inches, but you see that my paper is folded into 2. So I'm not going to put 5 inches, because if I put 5 inches here, that's this point like this. If I put 5 inches here like this, when I open it, it's going to be 10 inches because it's divided into 2. It's folded into 2. So I'm going to still divide that 5 into 2. so that I'm going to have 2.5. So you know all allowance is already included, so I'm going to have like 2.5 here. So that's from this point now. So from this point I'm just going to make a like a triangle slant to this point, to my 10 inches point, like this. So I'm just going to mark it like this. So I have it, so I've marked it out. So this is 2.5 now. So the next thing I'm going to do now, I'm going to create out my cone. So because I want the cone, I want the edges a little bit up, I want the down coming out. So for this point, you could determine how much height you actually want it to be. So for me, I'm going to go as much as about 3 inches or 3.5 inches. Okay, I should do 3 inches, is okay. So from this point like this, I'm just going to mark 3 inches. So all I'm going to do now, I'm just going to curve this point, this 3 inches point like this. I'm just going to curve it like to this point. So I already have my curve already. So I'm just going to use my pattern curve like this, and then I'll slant it up to this point like this. So I'm going to cut it out now. So when I cut it out now, you see that it has actually formed those cones that we have here on the peplum. I'm just going to cut it like this. So you see what we have. So at the end of the day, when you stitch, this side will be a little bit up, but if you feel that the 3 inches that I use is not much, you could add half an inch to it. So I think I'm going to add half an inch to make it like 3.5, so that that part will be a little bit smaller. So I'm just going to blend it like this, and then I'll cut it out. So this is what I have. So this is what I'm going to use now. So you could see it's already looking like what we have on the picture. This is what I'm going to use now to cut out my peplum. So and you remember I'm cutting out 7 of this. So I'm going to cut out 7 of this. So by the time I stitch and join, when you join all of them together, it will now form the waistline for you. So that's just, so I'm going to cut them out now. So I'll cut out 7. So I'll use this now to cut out the other ones. So I've finished cutting them. So this is the 7 piece here. So I'm just going to put them on the side like this. So the next thing I'm going to do now, so you see when you join them together, we're going to have our beautiful gourd. So you can see how it's looking already. So let's just leave it on the side and continue. So the next thing we're going to do now, we're going to cut out the top. That's the top and the round and capes that we have on top. So for cutting the top and cape, this is what you are going to do. You are going to take your tape like this, and then you are going to pass it around your neckline. How much? So you're just going to measure around like this. So for this, I'm going to be making use of 40 inches or 42 inches rather, because plus the allowance 42 inches. So you're going to determine how many I'm just going to call this one semicircle balls. You actually want to add to your cape. So for the neck, for the top neck, so what I actually measured as around my shoulder was actually 40 inches. So you divide 40 inches into how many panels you want. That's how many layers you want for the off shoulder part. So mine, I am going to make use of 6 inches. That's 6 panels. So when I divide 6 and 40 into 6, I'm going to have 6.6. So what are the panels that I'm going to cut out? So this is going to be like this. So from this point now, I'll place it here so you'll be able to see it. So from this point now to this point is going to be 6.6. So plus my allowance, everything is included on it. So this is what I'm going to cut out now. So for this one, you don't really need any special skills. All you have to do is you use like a semi-circle. So you could cut a round circle and then divide it into 2 and then trim it. So I'm just going to explain it to you. So I'm just going to do something like this. So when you are cutting out the circle, so you make sure that this point is actually 6.6. So what I actually have here is like 6.5. So the next thing, we are going to determine the width that you are going to use. So you remember that is a cape, so you are going to sew from inside and then it's going to fall down. So for mine, I'm going to be making use of about 5 inches, so it will have space. So I'm going to make use of about 5 inches. So I'm going to cut out another one like this. So I'm just going to measure my 6.6 out now from this point. And then I'll measure the length that I want. So I said I was going to make use of about 5 inches. So when I stitch, I'll be able to turn it properly. So at the end of the day, so it's going to look like this. So you see, from this one circle now, you already have 2. So I'm just going to open it up. So it's going to be like this on the neckline. So I'll open up the front neckline. So this is a little bit too big because it's going to be starting from this point. So why I said you should cut it to about 4 or 5 inches, because so I'll just do it, illustrate it from this point, because when you sew, you're going to be sewing it inside like this. We're going to sew it in. So when you sew it in like this, that's the cape, because you are going to make it to form like a cape, and then you are going to stitch. So when you stitch them in like this, so you see it's going to sit well on it. But if it is too small, it's going to be hanging. So they are going to stay on top of each other like this. So you see what we have. It's looking like what we have on the picture already. So you see, guys, so you are going to layer them. So you will put another one here now. That's for the armhole side. That's the one that will come on the arm side. And then another one. So they are just going to be on top of each other like that. So you calculate how much you want. So mine, I said I'm making use of 6. So I'll cut out 6 of this. So I'll just cut them out now, and then we'll go and start stitching them together. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do now, I'm going to go and start stitching. So I'm going to explain how I'm going to be stitching. So for the top part of the bodice, I'm just going to be doing my regular dart, and then I'll sew, join the back and the front together, and then I'll connect my band to it. That's for that. Then for the peplum, this is how we're going to be joining the peplum together. Before we're actually going to pipe them. So normally, if you were sewing a normal cone peplum, you are going to be stitching. When you're stitching, you're going to be stitching. I want you to pay close attention to what I'm doing. You're going to be stitching them from this side, and then at the end of the day, it's going to be looking like this. But because we are going to be using bias strip or with our Ankara on this is how we're going to be stitching. We're going to be stitching them on the right side like this. So I'm going to stitch on the right side like this. So I'm going to be joining them on the right side, and then join this one also on the right side. So I'm just going to join them on the right side. So when after joining, I'll come back and show you how to cut out the bias strap. Then we'll cover up our joining with the bias Ankara bias strap. So you could decide to use any strap of your choice. So I'm just going to go and do that, and then I'll bring it back to show you. Okay guys, so welcome back. So you could see what I have now. So this is the top part of my bodice. It's stitched now. So I'm just going to leave it here, and then this is my peplum. So you could see it's really looking good already. So we're not done. So normally, if you are going to use a fabric that is not thick to do this, so I'll advise you line it. But when you are lining, since you don't want the cones to stand, you don't want the cones to stand up like this, you are not going to use any form of interfacing, maybe wording or strong stay. You are not going to use it. So you are just going to turn it. So you are going to cut them, as in if you are cutting 7 panel, you cut another 7 lining that you use to sew and turn. So you just sew and turn. So that's if you are going to be using a soft fabric. But if you are using a fabric like scuba, which you don't need to, or thicker plain material, which you don't need to turn, or any form of Ankara, so it depends on you. So if you want to line it, you line it. If you don't want to line it, you don't line it. This is the right side of my fabric. So this point, I'm going to use a bias strap to cover them up like this. I will just cut out bias strap and cover them, and then when I'm done, you still use the bias strap to cover the down part of my peplum, because I'm not aligning it. That was the essence. So you are just going to put your fabric on bias form. If you are going to be using the Ankara that you are using, you use it. But if you are going to use your normal bias, you use your bias. So I'm just going to cut my fabric now in bias form, and then I'll fix it. I'll show you how to fix it. Okay, so in fixing, you're going to choose how you're going to fix. So we're going to fix like this. You're going to take your bias strap, you stitch it like this. You could decide to cut them. You could decide to cut them using the length. Just cut them out like this to make it easier. You are going to stitch along this line like this. After stitching along this line, and then you're going to fold like this, and then you stitch. You're just going to use it to cover it down like this. So you just fold on bias strap. So you use your bias to cover up all the points. So that's what I'm going to go and do. After covering up all my points, the longer strap that I have here, I'm going to stitch them together. Since I'm using the Ankara, I'm just going to stitch them together, and then I'm going to use it to fold this edge. So I'm just going to roll fold it with the bias strap. Okay, so I've finished stitching the piping and the peplum. Okay guys, so you could see we're almost done with our panels and peplum. So I'm so happy with the outcome of it. It's coming out fine. So like I said, so this part I just did a tiny pleat like I showed you earlier on. I just pressed it down a little bit just to have more of this fold. So that's just what I did. And then so this is the one that I'm going to be using for the top. So I've connected them together. So like I said, if you want to line yours, you can decide to sew, turn and line. Because mine, when I'm done, I'm going to use an interlock, that's overlock and seam, to lock all these edges. So that's what they call weaving. I'm going to weave the edges. So that is why. So how I'm going to fix this now, you're going to fix it from this and zipper allowance point. You're just going to open from the zipper allowance point, and then you're going to fix it round. So this is what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to explain it to you very fast. So I'm going to sew. You're just going to take one edge of it like this from the zipper allowance point. So this is the beginning of it, which is going to be on my zipper allowance part. I'm just going to stitch it like this. I'm just going to run a stitch. So I'm just going to do this now. I'm just going to run a stitch now like this on this side. So I'll run it round. When you get to the sleeve part also, you're just going to continue. You run it on top of the sleeve like this. You sew it like this on top. You sew it round and then through, and then comes back to the back. So after sewing, you just we're going to iron it. So after sewing, you're just going to turn it like this, and then you give it a good iron. So it's going to be like this at the end of the day. So you sew and then turn and then press it down. So I'm going to go and do that now. Come and show you the final look of the dress. Okay guys, so you could see this is the final look of our paneled peplum blouse. So I'm so happy it came out well. So you could see what I was talking about this point. So you could just fold it in a little bit, and then while stitching. So and then for this top part, so after joining all of them together, so you just stitched it. I'll stitch all of them around the neckline to the back part. So and then when you're done, you just iron it out like this. So guys, you could see. So if you find this video helpful, please do not hesitate to hit on the like button, and then subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not done so already. And if you are able to make yours using this illustration, please, I would appreciate if you would share it with me on Facebook at stylishnaija sewing group. I would really want to see what you've done with this paneled peplum blouse. So thank you so much guys. God bless you. I'll see you in my next video.